Hello, everyone. This is Brian Germain. I had a minute here to connect with the world, and I wanted to point out something that I've been noticing an awful lot, and maybe you guys have too, on the drop zone. I've noticed that people don't always take care of their gear very well, and one of the things that of course, the area maybe that most people aren't very comfortable with that affects them quite a bit is whether you actually are paying attention to the condition of your lines. And people are like, well, either it's going to break or it isn't. Well, there's something else going on for a lot of you that happen to have Spectra lines. Of course, many people nowadays, they have HMA or Vectran, very common lines. But the Spectra is great stuff. That's the white suspension line. But it's got a low melting point. And I've mentioned this a number of times, and I actually created a video teaching people how to sort of check their trim, but also to fix it. And most people fix it by chopping the lines off and putting new ones on. Well, that's going to cost you, between $300 and $400 to replace your line set. And so I created this video, but I'll give you a basic description of what I teach in this video so that you at least know that it's possible. First, let's start off with what happens to your canopy as it goes out of trim. So first of all, the reason why it goes out of trim is that the line itself, the Spectra line, is a low melting point. To be specific, it's 297 degrees Fahrenheit. So you've got this, the nature of this line is that it does melt somewhat due to the friction against the slider grommets, right? So when the slider gets pushed down by the lines, the skirt, the outer bits, so the A, B, and C and D lines on the wingtips that pushes the slider down, the brake lines that push the slider down, they get a lot of friction. Well, the other aspect to weigh in here is not only is there shrinkage and contraction of the weave itself, but also the lines are not loaded equally, right? So most of your load is carried across the middle of the canopy, center of 3 or 5 cells, and then the wingtips don't carry as much load. The brake lines don't carry as much load as your center A lines do, right? The D lines don't carry that much load. And so when you take the relaxed nature of the weave, when it's not loaded, of the line itself, and then the slider comes zinging down there, what happens is it sort of keeps the line in this relaxed configuration, whereas the center lines, they're always loaded up. And so consequently, the wingtip lines end up a lot shorter than the center cell does. The D lines end up shorter than they were intended to be, and the brake lines shrink too. So there is sort of a prevention of the full extension being allowed for all the time. And over time, you get, we're talking not an inch or two. If it was just an inch or two, you'd be like, oh, yeah, whatever. No, we're talking about big chunks. I caught one this past weekend. There was like total shrinkage amount, at least 10 inches. On a canopy that the person's like, yeah, the lines are a little bit old, but I don't really know how many jumps. I haven't been logging the number of jumps on this particular line set. And I was like, oh my God, this sucker's way out of whack. And so I did what I could to fix it. Obviously relining will solve the problem, but only temporarily because it's going to continue to go out of trim. Of course, the consequences are bad openings, right? End cell closure on opening is quite common for many canopies when they go out of trim because the wingtips pull down. The other thing that happens a lot is you get the canopy a little less stable in turbulence, a little just sort of the way it flies, a little wobbly on the roll axis. During the flare, maybe it wants to tip over, as if your slider is part way up the lines. Essentially, that's create an increased anhedral arc, the bowing from a front view. So this is a problem. It's something we got to address. And relining the canopy every 200 jumps isn't really a good solution for most of us. And so what I do is I actually, and I teach this in the video that's on Adventure Wisdom. You're going to want to see the video, honestly, to be sure you're not doing it wrong, because you could really mess up the way a parachute flies if you do it wrong. But if you do it right, it's really quite easy. And once every 100 jumps or so, you can put your parachute back in trim pretty much, within reasonable amount. And she flies better. She opens better. So essentially, just in a nutshell, what I do is I cut the canopy away, make sure you release your RSL link, right? So that you're not actually deploying your reserve when you cut it away. You take it off, you run a pull-up cord through the 3-ring, and you tie it securely, right? Really good knot to something solid, like a door hinge, the lower one, to a hanger door or something that really you can pull on, because that's what you're going to do. So the wingtip A line, for instance, right, the A1, and well, at least I call it an A1, depends on the manufacturer. If you compare the wingtip to the center, you go, all right, they should all be the same. So right and left, compare back to each other, but also compare to the center as your reference point. And you'll see there's a big difference. Even after like 2 jumps, the wingtip A in most parachutes should match the center A. So you just pull on it and it goes, it extends back to where, more or less, where it should be. Now, obviously, if you do the right side, not the left side, you're flying in a circle. So that's not ideal. So you match the right and the left. Now, people say, wait a minute, you're stretching the lines here. What if you stretch it too far? Not to worry, because what happens is you can actually, if you look at an individual fiber of Spectra, it's got no creep. It's got no stretch over time. It doesn't actually stretch. So what's going on is the weave is changing, right? So you're pulling it to its fullest extent, where it should be in the first place, but those wingtip lines and the Ds and the brakes don't get loaded enough. So you're loading them, right? It's not that complicated. So basically you stretch it until you kind of get to a stopping point, and that's it. You can stretch all day. It's not going to get any longer. So it's like tuning a guitar. You got to make sure your parachute's working right. Now, obviously, you want to make sure that you're tying it with something strong. Obviously, a lot of the new pull-up cords are plenty strong, but the knots slip. The new silky material, I cannot tell you the number of times that I've had it slip off and I punch myself in the face or I fall over. So don't let this be you. Tie a really good knot. Make sure that you keep your arms straight and, sort of yank and use your body weight. It's really not very hard to do. And so I'll do it to the, A1, right, the wingtip A's. I stretch this one, compare it to see how much I change. Then I stretch the other one. Then I go to the B. Then I go to the C. And, if you got them, right? And some canopies don't have a D wingtip line because it's fully elliptical, and the cord length on the wingtip, front to back, is not as great as the root. So it doesn't need an extra line. There are lots of parachutes like that. Then you do your Ds. You'll be amazed how much you can stretch your D lines. And of course, if you stretch your D line out, the slope of the canopy, the trim, is now steeper, so she flies faster. So if you want to make your older canopy start to fly like it's fairly new, there you go. This is a pretty easy way to go. So the name of the video that I created that sort of shows all of this stuff and goes into a lot of depth and other things that relate to main parachute maintenance is, as you might guess, main parachute maintenance and retrimming. It's on Adventure Wisdom. It's really cheap. And you can download it, you can stream it, whatever you want. But I think you'll find it's really, really useful. Because I feel bad for these people that are trying to flare a parachute that isn't working right. It's tipping over because of the anhedral. They get opening problems. It's bouncing around in a turbulence. These are things that you can take care of on your own. The other thing that I created another video that you can find that relates to this topic, but your kill line shrinks too, right? So pretty much all the kill lines that I see out there are made of Spectra also. And the kill line that collapses your pilot chute right after opening, that sucker's shrinking, which means that every time you cock your pilot chute, you're cocking it a little less, right? Because it's getting shorter. And that's a problem because eventually your pilot chute will not have significant load, we call snatch force, to pull your bag off, right? Maybe it won't pull your pin at all. Maybe it just gives you a lazy lift of your bag, and that causes the extraction force in the rubber band to rotate the bag. And you got bag spin and then line twists. So what do? Well, yes, you can stretch your kill line. So just kind of give it a good tug when it's, maybe somebody sits on the rig and stretch it. It will help to a certain degree. But prevention, I think, is the best way to go with this one. And this is a solution that does not apply to your suspension lines, but you can do it with the kill line. Basically, what you do is you take the kill line itself and you pull it out part way, like just at from inside the pilot chute. You pull that line out and scrunch up the bridle, scrunch, scrunch, scrunch. So now you got all this kill line outside of the bridle, and then you lubricate it with silicone. There's spray on. There's this. I like the stuff that AirTech has that we use for the reserve closing loops, right? So that when your Cypress cuts your loop, the whole thing moves out of the way, so the flaps can open and let your stuff go in the event that you need a cypress to save your life. Better to pull, I think. So that stuff has been tested on Spectra for sure. We know it's okay using it on Spectra. So you pull it out on one side, you lubricate that, then you go over the bag side and you pull that part of the kill line out, you lubricate that puppy, and now the kill line slides nicely. It's not going to jam up where sometimes you have the pilot chute doesn't want to collapse for whatever reason, from friction. Well, that's not going to happen anymore. And since it doesn't have the friction, it doesn't shrink, at least not as soon. So that solves that problem. Now, word of warning, common sense, I think, would take over here, but please don't lubricate your suspension lines. I know we have been testing lubricating the very bottom of the suspension lines well below the cascade point, right? So you have, let's say, the A and the B line way down on the bottom to help the slider go the rest of the distance. We're testing it. It seems like it's okay. But man, if you spread the silicone over the whole line, you could end up with a very hard opening. So please be careful with lubricating your suspension lines. Friction is not always a bad thing when it comes to your deployments. I mean, you got me live here. There's a bunch of people that are there. I'm just curious. I'm going to scroll back through to see if anybody has comments or questions. But if you guys have a topic, right now I'm kind of talking about parachute maintenance, but I mean, anything at all. I'm live. What the heck? I mean, I got to run upstairs and have dinner with the boys in a few minutes here, but I had a little time while Laura's cooking dinner. And I wanted to, reach out to my skydiving family and share a couple of things that I find it's important. I mean, I keep hearing about these things where perfectly good skydivers with parachutes where they didn't pay attention to it, and they have a not so perfect day. I heard about a guy recently. He said, "Oh man, I tried landing on the rears recently and flopped onto my back, and it was because both my toggles came untied." Well, geez, I mean, who checked your work? So these little things of, how did I tie my toggles on? It seems common sense, and yet I think what makes us really good skydivers is not necessarily what we know, because we need to ever, expand what we know, keep on learning, but it's going back over our work, not assuming, they call it complacency, not assuming that the first time that you ran through something, the first time you replaced your closing loop, did you remember to put the washer back on? Is that not tied properly on your main closing loop? With all of it, double check your work. I build parachutes. You see sewing machines behind me. I'm still building parachutes after 23 years. And of course, as a one-man show here, what I need to do to make sure that what goes out the door is correct is I walk away and I come back and I look at all my seams as if somebody else sewed it. So that's kind of a good bit of wisdom, isn't it? Right? To sort of look away and then come back and take your ego out of this stuff, right? If you don't like something, fix it. Don't be lazy. You're like, oh yeah, this rubber band, it probably will last one more jump. Yeah, well, that's the one where it's going to break and you're going to get a slammer opening, because the bag dumps out prematurely before it gets a full extension, and the parachute spreads out before you get to the end of the lines, and you're going to find out what your feet smell like because the opening's so hard. This is our fault. We need to pay attention to details as skydivers, right? Little things, not going sort of into this dream of assumptions. It's like a nightmare, like sleepwalking, and you're not seeing what's really there when you go into expecting normal. Right? Expect that this moment is brand new, and novelty brings in some surprises. The airplane that's under your airplane when you're getting ready to jump out. Be ready for those things. The canopy traffic. You're in free fall and you look down, you see a parachute underneath you. These things happen. So there's gear things, there's skydiver things, there's driving to the drop zone things. That get people hurt too. There's the crazy after hours stuff where you're not paying attention to how much you drink, and then you have not much of a skydiving day the next day. Count your beers. So if anybody has a specific question, I can see whatever you're writing here as it scrolls through. If you write a short sentence, I'm happy to cover a specific topic. It's okay. If not, I'm going to have to bail and go eat some dinner. I think we got fish cooking right now. That's fun. Nothing we caught though. We went to the Shenandoahs. It was awesome. But we're trying to haul in fish for dinner, and they weren't biting on us. At least nothing big enough to keep. Oh well. So, I guess if there aren't any specific questions that you guys are bringing in, that's cool. It's okay. Hi, Dave. See, I can see if you guys pop in there and you write something. I can see Dave Matthews says hi, Brian. So I guess if I was going to sum it up, pay attention to the details. You know this, right? You already knew it, but sometimes we have to kind of refresh our, kind of fierce conviction to wake up from the sort of spacey, yeah, whatever, I'm safe, I know how to do this, it's just skydiving, big deal, and I think we have this pull towards wanting to feel more comfortable, which allows us, if you feel comfortable and fearless and happy, you're going to skydive better. Yeah, that's true. But if it's delusional because you didn't check your gear and you feel good because you just chose to feel good without having a reason to feel good, because I went down my checklist carefully, and I checked my gear as if it was a student's gear, and assuming that maybe something's wrong. It's possible. So Michael Simpson says, so what are my thoughts on the 12 months repack cycle on reserves? Well, that's an interesting one, because I think it's, first of all, I believe we should. There are reasons, some of the rigs out there, I don't think that they should. If you've got rubber bands on your reserve lines, like some of them do, like the Racer, no, you should repack the thing every week and a half. But if you've got a proper, actual bungee cord through loop, a safety stow on there, if it was packed in a dry environment and you check that the reserve is not starting to stand up, because of course, if your reserve loop starts to slip, if the knot compresses and the air starts to go out of the reserve, you start to get the spring standing up. So after about 2 or 3 months, you start to see these things, way before 12 months. And if the spring is not fully compressed, it will not shoot as far, right? And of course, nowadays with sky hooks, like so many people have sky hooks, you don't even need a reserve pilot chute most of the time, right? Because your reserve pilot chute is your main canopy on a sky hook. But what if you need it, right? What if you happen to be in free fall, unconscious, your Cypress fires, is it going to jump away from you? So that's one of the things to consider, is that if we do go to the 12 months repack cycle, for you guys, the people that you got a rig and somebody else packs the reserve, if you see that you kind of see it standing up, that reserve spring, and you can push on it and compresses, it actually moves, that spring will not shoot as far. Bring it to your rigger, have them open it up and tighten the loop, or ideally just replace the reserve loop. And make sure that sucker is going to shoot as far as it could. But I will tell a little tale, true story, that makes a case for why the parachute itself, generally speaking, will open even at a year or beyond. So I'm not going to say exactly where I was and who it was. Who, very, very good friend of mine. I've known him for a million years. I mean, literally, I've known this guy for 34 years. He's a great skydiver. He's kind of a wild man, and he trusts that the reserve repack cycle is way, way shorter than it needs to be. This is how much he trusted it. So I was visiting up at comes to me, say, Brian, I want to actually see this. You got to look at this. And he showed me a video of his wingsuit jump where he had a spinner opening, as you do from time to time, and he cuts away and he dumps his reserve. There's no sky hook. He doesn't even jump with a Cypress, right? He's kind of old school. Boom, opens the reserve, beautiful, right? It was an on-heading, nice opening, didn't even have end cell closure. I was like, yeah, that was nice. All right, so what's the big deal? Why did you want me to see this? He said, well, to be honest with you, I pencil packed it. He admitted to me that, any pencil pack where he signed somebody else. The actual rigger did it a while back, and he just signed the name, which is against the law. And he admitted it. And I said, well, how many times did you do it? He said, well, at first I was thinking it might have, it was a long time, but I wasn't really sure. So I went back through it in my logbook and everything. And it was 17 years. 17 years his reserve sat in there, and boom, it opened. Now, would that always be the case? I don't know. Would I want to smoke it down and fire my reserve under those circumstances? Hell no. Would I have it in the back of my mind all the time that I had a 17-year-old reserve? Personally, I would. But denial is not just a river in Africa, and some people are really good at that. That's not my thing. So to address that question most directly, I think that it'll be okay to go to a year. Many countries do, countries with a great safety track record. But it means you need to look at your reserve pin and shove it back in regularly. It means you need to, on your own, pull the cutaway cable and clean it and lubricate it. It means that on your own, you have to replace your loop, your closing loop on your main, right? On your own, you have to look at the condition of the main suspension lines, all that stuff, because a year is a long time and a lot can happen, right? You throw your rig in the back of the car and who knows what's back there, right? It could be a car battery acid, you don't know. So you have to be, regardless of how much time it's been since your reserve pack, check this stuff and know what you're looking for. And if you're a new jumper and you don't know the way the 3-ring should be routed, well, make sure that you sit down with somebody who's really good at this stuff and they walk you through it. And they say, this wears out here and that wears out there. And if it's a little overwhelming for you, well, that's why I make videos. So you go to Adventure Wisdom, the main parachute thing. And we also have another video that's a little bit bigger and longer that's about general gear maintenance, which I put a lot of work into. I think it'll be very helpful for you. But, I can't assume that every skydiver is going to go and get our stuff. I hope you do, because I think you'll find it's really good, really valuable, and improves your life. But in the meantime, I want to help everybody, right? That's why I do this stuff. That's why I have so many YouTube videos that are out there for free, because quite frankly, I'll admit it, I love you guys. Skydivers are awesome, and I don't want any of you to get hurt. Even the guys that, sometimes people go, that guy's an asshole. Yeah, maybe, but he's still a skydiver, and you got to take care of our whole family, the whole club. And to me, that means giving back as much as I can, So thank you all for joining. I'm going to shut her down and go grab me some dinner and get my boys to bed on a reasonable schedule. Those kids don't want to go to sleep ever. Life is too fun to go to sleep, right? So I love you all. Have a great day. Keep on paying attention to details. Live long and prosper. And thank you for joining. I've watched this material turn into action. I've watched it turn into major improvement for people. The next question I want you to ask for yourself is, when I envisioned how good I'm going to become, right, which is an ongoing process, right, as long as you continue to reach for more, you'll get better, but can you right now envision, for instance, the first jump course is going on and the instructor is doing their thing, and you got a bunch of scare students and the one guy in the back that's really cocky, that's like half asleep, right? And that's all happening, and all of a sudden the load that just opened, they're all coming in for a landing, and you're up there, right? And the instructor stops the course so that they can point out you coming in for a landing, because you are the good example that needs to be shared, right? Say, watch this one, watch this one. Watch how he looks relaxed, doesn't he? As he comes in, he looks very soft and calm in his body. He's not doing any major adjustments. He's letting his parachute. Now watch the flare. Oh, watch the smooth and the touchdown. Oh, beautiful, wasn't it, right? No impact forces on the body, low stress, absolutely, beauty in motion. That's what I want you to do. That's what I want you to envision. So what I'm asking you to do now is envision that that's you. Maybe not today. Some of you are having a big, sort of stumbling blocks that you've created for a variety of reasons. Maybe it's a gear thing. Maybe it's a lack of education thing on your drop zone. Maybe you've just gotten frustrated and started to believe that who you are is the person that crashes, right? Based on a couple of data points. And what I'm saying is, step back, take a bigger picture, because who you can become is a lot better than who you've been.
Go! Booyah, man! Let's go to Skydiver! This is how you go to fly now.
I've been trying to do it right. I've been living a lonely life. I've been sleeping here in instead. I've been sleeping in my bed, sleeping in my bed. So show me family, all the blood that I will bleed. I don't know where I belong, I don't know where I went wrong, but I can write a song.